We're right with you. The Morning Majority, 5 to 9 on 630 WMAL.
6:37 on the Morning Majority. We have Joe DiGenova, our legal expert, former prosecutor, with us. How you doing, Joe? Was it football or president for you, or both last night?
Well, we lost power, so my wife Victoria Sunstein and I went to a restaurant bar on Upper Connecticut Avenue and watched the president and fell asleep during that, and then woke up for the Packers game.
Yeah, which was sort of interesting.
Yeah,
good game, by the way.
Let me
what
tell
I
you
saw.
something. If you're going to start a football season with a game like that, you're going to have a great season.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. So, healthcare ruling from an appeals court this week. Some talking about how it may actually end up delaying the final answer from the Supreme Court. What's the story with that?
Well, this was the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals in Richmond, the Federal Circuit Court. A three-judge panel, all three Democrats, two Obama appointees, one Clinton appointee, ruled that the state of Virginia did not have the legal right to bring the lawsuit that it brought. They said it didn't have what the law calls standing. Mm-hmm. And they said because it had not suffered an injury of any kind, that merely passing a statute that said the federal government couldn't force its citizens to buy insurance was an insufficient interest, and threw the case out. Cuccinelli, as you know, brought this lawsuit on behalf of Virginia, and in the course of doing so did not put any individual plaintiffs in the lawsuit. In other words, citizens of Virginia who would be forced by the federal mandate to buy insurance. And because of that, the court said the state alone doesn't have the kind of interest that creates what's called a case or controversy under the Constitution to allow them to actually hear the case. So they threw it out. I actually think the court is wrong, and if the full court down there hears this case, which Cuccinelli either may do or go try to just appeal to the Supreme Court, I think they're going to find that the state of Virginia does have an interest in this case sufficient to be recognized. But this was a very, very interesting case. Again, three Democrats. They talked about the case being basically political in nature. They said the timing of it, the language that was used around it. And actually, the language that the court used was, I wouldn't say it was disturbing, but it sounded almost a little too political itself, although they did couch it in traditional legal terms about there being no standing. But they were pretty rough on the Attorney General.
All right, but ultimately there are other cases that the Supreme Court can take as well.
Right, there are 26 states suing down in Florida, and of course Cuccinelli decided not to join that lawsuit. So this case, even his case, is going to go to the Supreme Court because they're going to want to decide the question of standing. I mean, so the bottom line is, this really means nothing except for Ken Cuccinelli.
All right. There is a new terror threat warning out there. Various reports, but apparently they have credible information on at least 3 people and different names. When you hear that tells you that the intelligence is pretty good, right?
Yes, and in fact, what's really interesting about this particular threat is that it, according to the federal government, it comes from a previously reliable source. That is, it comes from someone who has given them information before about other terrorist attacks. And while it's unconfirmed, it's fairly obvious because of the way New York mobilized, that New York was told in no uncertain terms, guard your tunnels, guard your bridges. And of course, we have always feared after 9/11 that the easiest way for the terrorists to attack the United States, either here or overseas, would be by a truck or car bomb. And of course, you remember Times Square and the problem up there. This is inevitably the way the next attack will occur, and it's going to happen. And it's going to be either a car bomb or a truck bomb because there's just no way to totally defend against it. So apparently, that's what it was.
I wonder, because there have been reports that maybe people came from Pakistan and then through Dubai. They may be American citizens. They may have passports.
Right.
I wondered if the person, the credible source here that's been right before, is actually the Pakistani government.
It could be, and in fact, this is part of that approach avoidance conflict that we have with the Pakistanis. They have been a marvelous source of intelligence information. They have also been a horrible source of terrorist activity. Right. This is the yin and yang of Pakistan, and it makes it that's why it's such a difficult relationship to manage. I do think, though, that it's quite clear that the information was extremely good information. There would not have been the mobilization that has occurred were it not a very, very good piece of information. So the other problem with Pakistan is, even from a good and previously reliable source, It could be just a false flag operation. You just never know. But given where we are today, no one is going to take a chance, and they are going to up their alert as high as they can get it.
All right, Joe, you have great political chops. Your instincts are always very interesting to me. I always like to know exactly what you think. You saw the president's speech last night, albeit in a bar in Connecticut Avenue. But what did you think?
I thought the speech was predictable. I thought it was completely political. I thought it was almost embarrassing. I sat there, and I must say, I was sitting with Victoria and I were sitting at this bar on Upper Connecticut Avenue and listening and watching people. And I must tell you, people were underwhelmed. And this was, how can you give a speech? He said remember he told us he was going to give us, he was going to take time, he was going to give us all this stuff, and he doesn't even have a piece of legislation yet. There's still, this is really manipulative. It makes you angry. If this is as serious as he says it is, why weren't these people working all through Labor Day, all through the pre-Labor Day? And there's not even a piece of legislation for anyone to look at or read. There's just a speech.
Well, why have the speech? Why did we have to fast forward the speech this week if you don't even have a piece of legislation? Well, the reason is
very simple. He needed to have a crowd applauding him. The reason he wanted the joint session was he wanted to be in front of Congress so the Dems could applaud. This was a purely political event, and it had no legislative significance whatsoever. And to their credit, the Republicans said, well, we heard some very good ideas. There may be some room here for us to negotiate. They didn't pound all over him like they could have. I think that was very wise on the part of Republicans. What they should do is challenge him. They should really make him work. But it's not going to happen. This is now about re-election. This has nothing to do with the substance of job creation. There wasn't a single thing that he proposed in there that any real economist would tell you is going to do anything to create a private sector job. He's going to save teacher jobs. That's public sector. Firemen and policemen. Great. Love to hear it. Public sector job. And then Solyndra. Let me just tell you something. Solyndra is going to get ugly. They are going to find out. I will venture, first of all, there was probably a whistleblower who has already filed a private lawsuit, which is called a qui tam. This is under the False Claims Act. The reason the FBI raided that place was that they got inside information from employees who have filed a secret lawsuit against the United States government on what's called the False Claims Act. I will bet you dimes to dollars. Because what happens when you file one of these lawsuits on behalf of the United States government as a private citizen, you can get up to 33% of any recovery, which could be $150 million for the people who squealed on Solyndra. So this stinks to high heaven, and the reason you notice he didn't mention Solyndra in his speech last night.
No green energy really at all last night.
Lots of clean energy, but no clean Solyndra.
All right, Joe. Good to talk to you as always. Appreciate your time and your insights.
Okay, guys.
Joe DiGenova, our legal expert. Solyndra, by the way, is the green company. We talked about this last week.
Went out of business, but received several $100 million, right? $535 million in federally backed loans.
From
the stimulus.
From the stimulus, and went bankrupt.
Yes.
And obviously, there's all kinds of shenanigans